Welcome to the Heart of Innovation, 60 minutes that could save life and limb, with new breakthrough ideas and innovation changing the healthcare landscape. Brought to you by Patient Advocacy Group, the Global P.A.D. Association at padhelp.org, in partnership with Reflow Medical, the pulse of medical ingenuity. Here are your hosts for the Heart of Innovation, Emmy award-winning journalist and founder of the Global P.A.D. Association, Kim McNicholas, and interventional cardiologist and founder of Save My Piggies Health and Wellness, Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Heart of Innovation. Today, we have a truly remarkable story to share. Our guests are Pete and Amy Johnson, the founders of Rock from the Heart. Their journey began in 2015 when Pete was diagnosed with aortic valve disease and an aortic aneurysm. What followed was an eye-opening experience that revealed a significant gap in the healthcare system, a lack of clear, consistent information for patients facing aortic conditions. Frustrated by conflicting advice and overwhelmed by the abundance of negative information online, the Johnsons decided to take matters into their own hands. They realized that the gloomy prognosis often presented on the internet really did not reflect the reality for many patients with aortic disease. And so coming up on today's show, we're going to hear the Johnsons' journey to creating Rock from the Heart and truly rock an awareness for aortic diseases. But first, before we introduce you to the Johnsons, I want to give a warm welcome to my co-host and the birthday boy. Happy birthday to Dr. John Phillips.
Thanks, Kim. You know, I feel like
I had to do it again. I had to, because I know how much you can't stand celebrating your birthday, even though your trip and every trip you make around the sun is more and more piggies saved.
that is true. I thank you for the well wishes. I feel like I was listening to the news a while back, and there was a very wealthy Indian couple that were married. I think they had a marriage ceremony over, I don't know, 6 months or something like this. And it was just really, really drawn out. And I feel like that's how my birthday is right now. But I am really stoked because I was able to get these little piggies from you for those that are watching. So this is pretty cool. I love little piggies. We've got a bunch of them. So thanks for the well wishes. Happy Saturday, everybody. It looks like it's pretty nice here in Columbus. We're getting ready. OSU is playing Oregon. So it should be a pretty good game this evening. So looking forward to watching that as well.
Oh, you have me watching them now. I'm rooting for them. They're now my team because they're your team.
This is probably their first big test, I believe, and Oregon's a pretty good team. They're out west playing them, so we'll see how it goes. Should be fun to watch, though.
We're going to be watching Penn State after the show today. Penn State my dad went to Penn State, so we're huge Penn State fans.
Penn State's ranked top 5, I think. They're doing pretty well, I want to say. So that'll be a good. Who are they playing? Do you know?
I don't even know. No, okay. I don't.
But Dad knows. Dad'll text us here.
Dad will probably text you.
Yes, he probably will. So I'm excited to talk to the Johnsons about aortic his aortic disease, because I suspect he probably had a bicuspid aortic valve, which is the most common kind of congenital cardiac anomaly that's out there. And there's lots of ways to treat it now, some minimally invasive ones as well. But then to have an aneurysm on top of that, as it stands, that requires a pretty large surgery. So it's not for the faint of heart, and it can take the wind out of a patient's sails for quite a while. And I'm really excited to hear Pete's story and Amy's story as well. So looking forward to the show.
Definitely something that's near and dear to my heart, because my younger brother actually has a bicuspid valve defect and multiple aneurysms around that. So they're keeping a very close watch on him. And he was big into weightlifting, and he can no longer do the big weightlifting that he used to be able to do. He's had to cut that down quite a bit. And he said, at some point that big surgery is going to be inevitable for him, but he's trying to put it off as long as possible. So I'm really excited to hear more about what the Johnsons are doing, and even to participate in what they're doing, because those, especially everything with the aorta, is very near and dear to my family, with my mom also passing from an aortic aneurysm. And then also I was found to have a very mild dilation, and so I'm on the watch now. So
well,
I think we should
Yeah, just real quick. Last week, I saw a patient who was admitted to our hospital because he had limb ischemia, so his leg was cold. And really, we found out that it was cold. Well, he had had some debris kind of get clogged in the leg, but it came from his aneurysm, his infrarenal aortic aneurysm, so aneurysm below the kidney arteries that he didn't know about. So we ended up having, so we found this for him. It's just serendipitous, but it just speaks to next month. So November is men's health, like No Shave November and things of that. But it's just general awareness for men because guys are typically have more higher risk for aneurysms than women, and it's also, I think, a 3-to-1 mix of bicuspid aortic valve, male to female. So shout out for screening for AAAs and aneurysmal disease in general.
Definitely. I know they have a big screening program across England, and we just don't have that here. Thank goodness for Lifeline screening because they do it. But I think that there needs to be, just as we always say with peripheral artery disease, I think there needs to be regular screenings for aortic disease as well. It used to be that they would take your primary care would take the stethoscope and put it on your abdomen, and they could actually, test for a Brui, which is that turbulent flow. And they just don't do that anymore. And that's frustrating. That would have saved my mom's life, even the cardiologist just doing that.
Yeah, not to dwell into the physical exam or lack thereof, but yeah, a lot of us have kind of, because testing is so advanced and you can do point of care and things, and you kind of miss the simple stuff. But well, we talk about this all the time too, about doing a proper vascular exam as well, where a lot of patients, no one touches them, and things are missed. So it's important to really highlight a good physical exam when you're seeing a patient.
We're going to get into the Johnsons in just a moment, but I do think that we need a moment of inspiration to kick things off.
Dr. John Phillips, spectacular vascular moment of inspiration.
So I was inspired today by what you had the intro about the Johnsons and how they kind of took matters into their own hands. And so I found a quote from Abraham Lincoln, and he's quoted as saying, "The best way to predict your future is to create it." So grab the bull by the horns and go after your dreams, or create your own future by just working hard. And I'm interested to hear what it was that tripped them up, and when and why they decided to do something on their own. So looking forward to it.
We're going to introduce you to both Amy and Pete and figure out how they grab the bull by the horns next, right here on the Heart of Innovation. Don't go away.
I think as we're talking about P.A.D. And we want people to say, we want the legs to be saved, I think it's kind of interesting that, and I'm just reminded of some of the great people my father met during his lifetime. And he got to meet, I don't know if you've heard of him, someone called Sir Douglas Bader, who was, there was a film called Reach for the Skies, and Douglas Bader was essentially a World War II ace in the Battle of Britain who flew without any legs. He had artificial legs, and he flew. And he was this great name. So my father met Douglas Bader in the mid to late, probably the late 70s, early 80s, and at the end of his life anyway. And the thing that Douglas Bader communicated, this is someone who'd lost both his legs in a horrific accident before World War II, and was just how important it was to focus on what it would take to keep legs. So, as someone so that's what I think's really great about what you're doing, and what a lot of my father's practice was about, was what can we do to save legs? And that's from someone who lost their legs, because yes, you can have a great life without your legs, but if you can do things that save legs and make those differences, it's a huge difference for that person's life. So, that's the kind of thing that strikes me is important about today, and what we can do to ensure that those patients get into the right hands and get treated properly and early.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Kim, I say we introduce and bring in Amy and Pete Johnson, our guests for today. And I want to hear about his story, but also I'm kind of interested what is Rock from the Heart? That sounds pretty cool, because I hope there's some musical background here.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I
I
heard
think they have one of the coolest heart foundations on this planet. I mean, they're doing just the coolest things with their awareness campaigns and conferences. Amy and Pete, thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday afternoon. I know you're all busy. I know Amy just came off another event in the community, so we really appreciate you guys being here and sharing your story.
Thanks so much for having us. It's an honor to be here. We're excited.
Yeah, I want to go back to the beginning. So 2015 is when this all began, right?
Yeah.
Were you experiencing symptoms? What symptoms were you experiencing? How did this whole thing come about?
Well, I went in for my annual physical, and my doctor said, "Hey, Pete, anybody ever told you you have a heart murmur?" And I said, "Yeah, I've heard that all my life since I've been, 11 or 12 years old." He said, "You ever had it checked?" I said, "No." They just kind of shrugged it off, said it sounded like an innocent murmur, whatever that is. And he said, "Let's have that looked at. Let's just make you an appointment. They'll do what's just like an ultrasound, if you know what that is." I said, yeah, I've been a dad a couple times. I know what the ultrasound is and that they don't hurt. So I was all ready to roll. And got the ultrasound, and we got the phone call. I got the phone call, and oh boy, I don't know who reacted worse, me or Amy, but I was told that I had an aortic aneurysm and a bicuspid heart valve, and that I would be facing open heart surgery. And this is from a nurse. I'm like, okay, well, we'll talk to you later, and hung up the phone and told Amy about it. And maybe Amy can take the story from
Yeah,
here.
I'm curious.
Just
You're playing telephone here.
Yeah.
You're like he only heard it from a nurse, so of course he's not going to have the details, right? Just the basic results. And then he has to explain it to you. I'm curious what was lost maybe in translation finally getting to you.
Well, it was interesting because we've got kind of offices that kind of back end each other. So we hear a lot. And if you're on speakerphone, of course, you can hear well. First of all, was when doctor was going to send him for the echo. I'll always remember that phone call because he said, "Amy, there's something wrong with my heart." And as soon as you hear the heart, I mean, that's the engine that drives you're scared right in. And then the echo results came, and I heard the call. I can remember exactly. Okay. Nurse said, and Pete said, she said, "You've got a 5-centimeter aortic aneurysm and aortic stenosis that will require surgery. Someone will give you a call within 2 weeks to make an appointment." Click.
What goes on? And this is where I really like and I think Dr. Phillips understands because he's here all the time and he hears these patient stories. Between that time that they tell you you have something going on and the time that you can get in for either further testing or for a full consult, the anxiety, the stress, the fear, the multiple trips to Dr. Google that exacerbates all of that. Can you walk us through that process for you?
Well, we were pretty lucky because I called back the doctor's office and I said, "Look, I gotta come in and see Dr. Prasanna like right now. Consider it kind of an emergency." I don't know if I said those words, but we got to go in within the hour and talk to him. So that we were pretty lucky, because if we lived maybe in a bigger city, that wouldn't have happened. But
and I'll just interject as a physician. We sometimes, and I've said this many times on the show, my level of empathy has gone up exponentially listening to patients and being a part of this show. But we sometimes lose sight of that. I'll get that report. Just to, I guess, clarify some stuff for the audience, an aneurysm, the normal aorta should measure less than, and at that area should be less than about 4 centimeters, depending on your body size and male, female. So when it gets to 5, that usually means we need to start watching it. The guidelines just changed with respect to considering surgery. It used to be 5.5 centimeters. Now it's 5. And so, as a physician, I see that and say, all right, well, call the nurse, Jeanette's my nurse, call the patient and let them know. And then I'm always like, okay, I'm going to call the patient myself, because that in my mind requires a conversation with the patient. Like, this is the game plan here. Because again, a lot of these folks feel like the sword of Damocles is hanging over them. And Pete, you were lucky enough to get in with your physician and talk, but we lose sight of that sometimes, that there is a real human being on the other end of that phone call.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you were able to get in, though. And that's really good. I'm glad that you had the wherewithal to actually get on the phone and say, hey, because that could have quickly spun out of control for you if you didn't get in right away, as it does for so many people.
I was immediately on the internet, of course, Googling when I heard those words, right? And your heart sinks and your knees go weak. And I almost passed out. Honestly, that's how the shock of that news, when you go from I'm healthy 1 minute and the next minute you need open heart surgery, it's like, what are you talking about? And getting in there and having Dr. Prasanna, before he even sat down, he looked at Pete and he said, Pete, this is a good thing. We found it and it's all fixable. And I will always remember those words and hearing him say that. Then he sat down, drew the pictures, what it looked like, and then sat down with Pete as they made the appointment with the cardiologist 2 weeks down the road for that. That moment was really what we both needed, because I can't even imagine, it was hard enough going the next 2 years waiting for the surgery and the 6-month scans, but to have to go 2 weeks and with this ticking time bomb that you find out you've got in your chest was debilitating. It was crippling fear.
Yeah. And I'm curious, where was that lack of information that drove you to actually start Rock from the Heart? Because you didn't actually start Rock from the Heart until he actually had open heart surgery in 2017, and that was actually a success. So I'm curious, one, why you ended up waiting so long, and at what point during this journey you felt like there wasn't enough being done, information wise, awareness wise. And so you needed to start your own organization to put out the information and create the awareness and the change that you wanted to see that wasn't being seen at that point.
Well, that's a lot of questions to answer in one.
It's loaded. It's loaded.
Well, as you kind of laid out the math, I was on watch and wait for about 1.5 years before I had my open heart surgery.
Really? Wow.
Where the misinformation started coming in is, unfortunately, the cardiologist my family doctor recommended me to see was on vacation or busy or something. So I saw another one in the same network, and we came to find out he was loaded with some misinformation, like more than one item of it, which I eventually saw the cardiologist who my family doctor wanted me to see in the first place. We just changed.
And what did he give you information that just scared the bejesus out of you?
No, he just gave me some wrong information, and we found out it was wrong, and I didn't trust him on anything else, so I didn't want to see him again. I mean, he said, none of this is hereditary. Tell your kids not to worry. That was one thing he told me.
Yeah, real quick, it's kind of a little bit confusing for the patient, because we as cardiologists often follow patients that have an aneurysm or a bicuspid valve. So the aortic valve has 3 valves or 3 leaflets, and folks, again, I mentioned this is the most common congenital cardiac anomaly. About 1% of the population has it globally. But we follow this, and then when it gets to a certain size, the aneurysm gets to 5, then I refer the patient to a cardiothoracic surgeon, and then they kind of take over from there, because I'm not a surgeon. I don't do the surgery. So I think then the patient starts to have a lot of questions regarding the surgery and timing. And those are appropriate questions. Oops, lost my piggy. Those are appropriate questions for the surgeon, and maybe not us as cardiologists.
It's a roller coaster ride for sure.
Pete, I'm curious. Did they want to see if the aneurysm was going to grow a little bit before, because you said it was 2 years of waiting, right?
Yeah, 1.5 or 2 years of watch and wait, and I was checked every 6 months. Yeah, measured.
So aneurysms in the belly, the below the kidney arteries or thereabout, like those will start to repair at 5 centimeters. The ones in the ascending, the right off the heart going upwards, the surgeons typically wait. And I at some point, I hope we can get into it for you, because that has to be a pretty nerve-wracking wait, because you don't now in that area, the aorta typically doesn't rupture there, because that's the concern that we have, like a weakened tire. You know, your bike tire gets a weakening and it can pop. That's at the level of the kidneys typically more so. But the concern is that it, what we call dissects, and then it tears apart, and then you can have lack of blood flow to the brain, to the everywhere, and that can be catastrophic too. So, I mean, I have a lot of empathy for you, because it's very hard for patients to kind of wait in their minds. Are like, why don't you fix it now? And that's where a lot of conversation, I think, has to happen between the patient and the physician and the surgeon
And
regarding
that's
kind of the
why
plan.
my brother, I mean, we were ready. We were on standby to go at a moment's notice to have him have surgery. And I mean, you feel like a ticking time bomb. And I've talked to Karen Henderson at Aortic Hope as well. And she says, what doctors don't understand is that you go home and they may not be worried, but you do feel like a ticking time bomb. And especially with what I saw happen to my mom when they kept sending my mom home, she was a ticking time bomb. And so, and she didn't win that battle. And it's really kind of sucky. So I almost imagine over those 2 years, is that what you were experiencing, that you just were worried that one day you just weren't going to wake up?
Well, I know I was
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah.
I would, when he would nap, I just told somebody today at the event that it was nice the days that he snored when he was napping, because I knew he was okay. But there was more than one occasion where I went upstairs just to see if I could hear him breathing when he was napping, because it's on your mind constantly. And really, I was telling Pete's cardiologist, Dr. Campbell, you're living your life on a roller coaster in 6 months chunks. You're here, oh, appointment's getting closer, and we're going to wait.
Coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we'll have more from the Johnsons, and we're going to hear about Rock from the Heart. So don't go away.
I tell patients that they really should consider themselves like athletes in some ways, because when you walk, you're not only recruiting blood vessels, but you're also conditioning your muscles so that they can withstand periods of stress. If you need to go on a trip or something, your muscles are not conditioned, and you're going to wind up having a lot of muscle soreness. But if you do the daily walking, if you do the 30, 45 minutes of walking, your muscles will be conditioned, and just like an athlete in their prime, you'll be at that top level of performance for whatever blood supply you have, and you'll be less likely to suffer when you have to really exert yourself. So doing that daily walking also has a benefit of keeping your muscles conditioned. And if you get into a situation where you are experiencing worsening lack of circulation because something has changed, your muscles will be able to tolerate that much better. If it takes, several days to have your treatment for whatever reason, you're going to be able to tolerate that better and have a better outcome as a result of it. So the walking is really, really important. I had a patient who clotted off her entire iliac system, all of the arteries in her leg, all of them. And she saved her foot because she was doing this walking. Her muscles were able to tolerate this ischemia like you wouldn't believe. It was hard to imagine that she tolerated it for as long as she did, but it was only because she was doing this walking every single day.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
We're going to jump right into it, because there's a lot of meat on this bone, as they say. So, Pete, tell me, during the break, we were just kind of chatting about this waiting game that you're playing. And I think I was commenting on how important it is to have pretty clear communication with your physician and surgeon regarding what to look for, timing of events. But as a patient, and Amy, you were saying this as well, like this is nerve-wracking, right? And you don't know, I mean, you don't know what to expect. And because of that, I imagine you're on pins and needles when you're getting your every 6-month test or waiting to hear from the doctor. So share your thoughts with us on that, if you don't mind, and then we'll go into the rock from the heart, because I imagine some of these problems stemmed the rationale for starting that.
Well, once I found my second cardiologist, he was a wonderful communicator and a really smart guy, great doctor. He's on Minneapolis Heart Institute's valve team. And so, he was real knowledgeable and had answers to all the questions, recommended a surgeon that he works with. They really do things in teams over there, so they all know each other, and we just love that. A lot of communication between cardiologist and surgeon. I'd ask him a question, he'd say, "Hey, you know what? I'm not going to answer that. I'm going to call Judah on his lunch hour, and then I'll send you a text." It's like, great. I love it. It was a really kind of like a buddy relationship in some aspects. And so I got really lucky there, and I just really enjoyed that part of it. But like my wife will tell you, living your life in 6-month chunks going, well, I'm either going to die, or maybe I'll have to heal for 3 or 4 months and not make any money. Lots of concerns coming in there. And, but yeah, we started getting better intel as time went on, but it started off real shaky with a lot of confusing information. I'm a drummer. That's how I make part of my living. There's nowhere out there. Well, there is now, because I put it out there, but there's no place and no one that can seem to tell you how long you have to be out after being cracked open like a walnut before you can play drums like Animal and people don't play drums like Animal. So I made a video for my cardiologist. This is how I play drums. And I showed him that. I said, this is what we'll go by. When you think I can do this, let me know, you could look up how long before I can play tennis. Well, there's probably 8 articles that'll tell you. How long before I can golf? How long before I can make out with my wife? How long before I can do this? All these different things, but not drumming.
You cared about was playing the drums.
Playing the drums and kissing my wife,
There you go. What more do you need in life?
That 50% answered, right? That was online.
Yeah.
But you didn't have any answers to when you could play the drums, and that's your heart, that's your soul, that's your passion, right?
Well, my now buddy Kelly Keggy from Night Ranger, the drummer, and he sings Sister Christian, if you know that song. Anyway, we went and saw him perform like a couple months before my heart surgery. He had just had the same, very similar heart surgery 2 months before that. And he was playing, I think we saw him back playing his first full night after surgery. So that helped me. I call that the Kelly Keggy barometer. So my barometer was very similar. So now all you drummers out there, give yourself 2 months and you're back at it.
That's awesome. And so how come you didn't start Rock from the Heart before? In recognizing that these are the answers you wanted, why wait till after the surgery?
Because I didn't know if I'd be alive to do it.
Wow. That's scary. That's a scary thought.
It's a horrible way to live, but I'm smiling now,
Yeah. And I can tell you from my standpoint, the day we drove, 200 miles to see Night Ranger, and Pete looked at me and he said, he goes, okay, now I've got the Kelly Keggy barometer. I'm going to drum 8 weeks after my surgery. That was the first day that I thought I could plan activities, life, anything longer than a 6-month chunk beyond that. And I think we planned to go to a concert or something. We bought tickets for something that was after the surgery. But before that, I didn't want to buy concert tickets. I didn't want to do anything because you didn't know if I was going to still have my Pete with me. That's the real fear that you live with. So it was Pete actually in the hospital when he looked at me and he goes, Amy, when I get through this thing, I want to do something to help other people who are diagnosed so that maybe they're not so scared.
Yeah, not going crazy like I was and Amy was, because we're both mentally pretty stable people, but we felt like we were nuts during those 2 years. And not like I shouldn't really say that. That's kind of a mean thing to say, nuts. But we were struggling, we'd look at each other and kind of not know what to say,
Yeah, I mean, it's really we got less than a minute left, but it's hard. You stopped making plans. Ohio Health, we have a slogan now, keep making plans when you're getting treatment for cancer. But I mean, you have to keep making plans. But it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
It is. Well, coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we are going to hear about their plans for Rock from the Heart. You don't want to miss this. Stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation. Don't go away.
For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
You know, the beauty of being on YouTube is they can see us. Welcome back to the show, everybody. But so during the break, I was mimicking what it's like to be a drummer and how much like upper body movement that is, and to have your sternum cut open and then, wired back together and get back at it, Pete, in 8 weeks or whatever it is. That's a pretty big feat. But more importantly, a bigger feat, it sounds like, is you guys starting Rock from the Heart. So Amy, tell us a little bit about Rock from the Heart. What is it? Why you started it? And what are you guys doing as we speak?
Yeah, well, kind of like we said before, when the whole musical thing was part of Pete being the drumming and whatever, and it was music that kept us going through that whole 2 years. If we would feel stressed, it was music. We'd maybe find something to do musically, making videos or recording or just playing music. So Pete was like, maybe we should do, something small in the community. Maybe we should have a little event at the Legion, bring one of my local bands and raise some money for a heart group. And I looked at him and I said, well, why don't we see if we can book Night Ranger? And Kelly had the surgery. He's a survivor. And we did. So we went big. So instead of having Pete's band play at the Legion, we booked a theater in downtown Minneapolis and had the band Night Ranger come. And so we started organizing all that, and it's pretty cool. People were real excited. And we had people messaging me from across the United States, Karen Anderson being one of them from Aortic Hope. And I'm like, well, maybe we should add a day of education. If they're coming all the way to Minnesota in February, we better give them something to do. So we connected with Pete's cardiologist, who got us with Dr. Kevin Harris at the Minneapolis Heart Institute, and put together a lineup of speakers with a very patient-focused education event that we held the day before the concert. So we had people that year, I believe, from 14 different states that came in for the education portion and stayed for the concert the next night. And we've been doing that ever since. So if you come to a Rock from the Heart event, we've got Fridays, a day of education, followed by an informal reception and a dinner, a sit-down dinner. And then on Saturday, we rock.
I love that. I just love the way you're just like, and then just right after, we rock.
And another reason why I wanted to start it or do an event in the first place is because I had a lot of people messaging me asking, are you ever going to be able to play drums again after what happened to you? And I'm like, yeah. So I kind of said, hey, we should do something, Amy, with one of my bands I'm in, and so I can show people that I can still play after this. So I always play in the opening act for our national acts, just because it's my way of saying, hey, there's life. I can live my best life after my big surgery, and you're going to watch me do it because you're held captive waiting for the good band to come out.
And what happened in my 2-year relationship during those watch and wait years, I had a 2-year relationship with Dr. Google, which is, he's not a very good friend. and all the scary things. I mean, I'd read things like, I heard mention once of the arch, but Pete's aneurysm was not in his arch, but just hearing that word, well, Google led me down a deep, dark path where I learned about having to freeze your body. And if you're frozen for too long, all these things. And I'm like, oh, I had to stop. So being able to do something to help people say, no, stay away from Dr. Google. But what Rock from the Heart does, because we add this music event that reaches just a broad audience of people, maybe not necessarily touched by the disease, because as we know, most people who get diagnosed have no idea. They've got no symptoms. They're not being watched. They haven't heard, they're watching their cholesterol, but they're not thinking about their aorta or their valve. So they'll see, oh, Grand Funk Railroad is coming to Minneapolis. Rock from the Heart? This is me. We met a person actually because of Grand Funk Railroad who had dissected during COVID, who flew from Chicago to 2 Rock from the Heart events. And whereas once he thought he was alone on this journey, now he's part of the Rock from the Heart family because the music was out there. We were able to touch his life. We get people that hear about our concerts or just because of what we do that will message me and say, hey, I heard, so-and-so, they'll share a Facebook post of somebody that puts out about their relative, their friend, their coworker who's been diagnosed. So here's these people who aren't personally touched by it, but because they've either volunteered or attended Rock from the Heart, now they know there's a resource. So now when people go to Dr. Google or go out to the world of Google, we want them to find those stories of hope. We want them to find the people who are living their best lives after the surgery, not the doom and gloom or all the medical information that's so technical they get, totally confused and not know. But what's better than seeing, here's Pete, he's drumming. He drummed 8 weeks after his surgery. This can be you.
I think that's amazing. And I love that because it's easy to, that misery loves company, but the healing comes when you can inspire. And I think that that's what you're doing. And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we'll have final thoughts of both Amy and Pete and hear about their upcoming events for Rock from the Heart. That's next right here on KDOW. Don't go away.
Your type of condition is called critical limb ischemia. It's the most advanced form of P.A.D. or peripheral arterial disease.
Every 4 minutes, there is an amputation in this country due to P.A.D. and diabetes. We also know that 85% of these amputations are preventable with early intervention.
It's a flip of the coin. Patient prognosis is tied to whether or not they are referred to a true expert in the management of peripheral arterial disease.
Do you know if your physician is an experienced CLI operator?
When you're in the hospital dealing with doctors and stuff, you figure they know what they're talking about.
The skill level varies doctor from doctor and hospital to hospital.
Patients with limb threat are in constant fear. The depression that someone experiences after they lose a limb is equivalent to those of losing their spouse of 40 years.
I was stuck in a wheelchair close to 2 years and my husband had to quit work.
I didn't know what to do at this point because we had had nothing but infections and hospital stays and infections and hospital stays.
And they took one toe, another toe, and then it was another toe, and then half his foot before he was even diagnosed with P.A.D.
And all I heard was, what are we doing here? Just cut it off. And I pulled the curtain back like, are you kidding me?
Do you really want to go through all that?
That's crazy. That's insane.
The protocol is to send them to amputation. Always, always, always get multiple opinions.
We do have options.
We need to listen more to our patients.
If you're going to chop off their leg anyway, why not just let someone else try?
This is the progression. First comes the wounds, and then comes an amputation. And I wasn't going to accept that.
So that's what it's like to try to save a leg.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Pete, Amy, we really appreciate you being on our show. We've only got about 5 minutes left. So I have a question. How many lives do you think you have touched through the years with Rock from the Heart? And then my follow-up question is, who's coming this February, and how do we get tickets and be a part of this?
Yeah, I mean, lives touched is, we're working to really pull that demographic, but it's in the thousands. The amount of, emails that we get, or just communications that we have people at the shows. It's all of a sudden you'll hear a shout out, Rock from the Heart. Just last summer, somebody came up to us at a Night Ranger concert and said, I came to the first Fargo show that was Night Ranger, and 2 years later, I was diagnosed with an aneurysm and bicuspid valve, and I'm 10 weeks out from surgery.
And it's real weird when we'll be out of state, maybe at a music festival, and we'll see a Rock from the Heart shirt, or somebody will send us a picture. We saw a Rock from the Heart shirt in Hawaii or whatever. And we just,
That's awesome.
It's kind of freaky to us. It's like,
shirts,
wow, cool.
Shirts in the wild. Yeah, but we're really excited because we actually just announced our 2025 headliner for February 22nd this week.
So who is our headliner?
From the East Coast area, and 90s superhero stars.
Hey, we're the Spin Doctors, and we're pumped to be part of Rock from the Heart, coming to the Palace Theater in St. Paul on February 22nd, 2025. We'll be rocking with you to raise awareness for aortic and heart valve disease.
Oh, nice. I like the Spin Doctors. Sweet.
Yeah.
Yep. And as an added bonus, our friend and fellow heart surgery survivor, Gina Schock, the drummer from the Go-Go's, will be joining us, and then she'll drum on several Go-Go songs, double drumming.
Yeah, Gina and I will double drum again. We did that in Fargo. I said to Amy a couple of years ago, hey, that chick from the Go-Go's, Gina Schock, she had open heart surgery. Well, we wound up getting a hold of her, and I said, hey, would you trust me enough to fly to Fargo and double drum some Go-Go songs with me and Aortic Fire? And she said, in her neat East Coast accent, yeah, why not? That sounds fun, Pete. And she did. And she wants to do it again.
Approach these folks. I mean, was it just going through their agents? Was it social media? What did you say to get their attention?
Facebook message. I just did the story in a Facebook message, and 3 days later, I had a cell phone number.
You're kidding.
Kind of cool.
You just never know. You got to throw those darts and try to make those connections, and you reach for the stars. Like I said, instead of going for the Delano American Legion, we went for a national act, and it worked, and it's been working every year. We've had Night Ranger, Grand Funk Railroad, Rick Springfield twice, Sebastian Bach from Skid Row twice, and now bringing the Spin Doctors. So it's been a wild ride for sure.
Isn't that Spin Doctors Pocket Full of Kryptonite? Is that correct? Am I right there? Maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Million.
Go. All right. See,
So
kids,
is
I'm
Rock from
cool.
the Heart. Or, even though you can keep having those birthdays, it's never going to change your coolness.
That's right.
We've been having all these 70s and 80s bands for Rock from the Heart, and I said to Amy and our board, man, we got to get with the 90s because those guys are getting old now and at this age where they're going to have some problems. So
are they all, does everyone who participates, are they all touched in some way by it? Is that their attraction to being a part of your event? With these acts, is there someone as part of these acts, each one of them, that is impacted?
No, it started with Night Ranger that way because of Kelly, the drummer.
Yeah.
I mean, Gina's coming back, and that's how we contacted her. But yeah, these other bands, Rick Springfield, Sebastian Bach, I mean, everybody knows someone that's had something happen, but I don't think they personally have issues.
We have a live studio audience, so I want to get to a few of those questions. I want to open up the microphone to Douglas. Douglas, you have the podium. Go ahead and unmute and ask Amy and Pete Johnson from Rock from the Heart your question.
Please come to Texas. Bring Grand Funk Railroad with you. I've seen them so many times. They are a great band. Spin Doctors too. They came through Austin a couple of times. But I wanted to go back to that part about you were saying right after your surgery. I am a survivor too of open heart surgery. I had a myectomy. I have atypical hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and I found out with my family, my brother's always worried about where I go. I'm always alone, and you don't do this, you don't do that. And how was that? Because you're a drummer, and that's a lot different than going kayaking in the Gulf or mountain biking. So how was that dealing with that after you had the surgery?
Well, I would feel a little scared when I'd feel my heart start to beat hard when I'd start to play drums. But thankfully, cardiac rehab kind of helped me build my courage up in addition to drumming. And that went, after I started drumming, I was still in cardiac rehab, and that helped me a lot. I mean, if that's what you're wondering, I was kind of nervous though about being alone and things like that. But it just got better over time. And it's such a huge mental thing that's hard to explain to people who haven't been there, but I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because I still have moments today, you're right, where my heart still acts up a little bit, and it's like, oh, am I alone? Do I need to have one of those buttons around my neck? Help, I've fallen, I can't get up.
Yes.
We have Marcia. Marcia, go ahead and unmute and ask Amy and Pete Johnson, the founders of Rock from the Heart, your question.
Thank you. Great show. Great show. And your platform is just wonderful. Thank you for what you're doing. And I wanted to say, as a PAD patient, I don't have necessarily a bad heart that I know of, but I understand that living 6 months to 6 months, and I didn't plan anything I'm 2.5 years in, but in the beginning I didn't feel comfortable, and I'm single. So bless your heart, and you. And Grand Funk Railroad was my first album. My question is more, maybe more for Dr. John. When you were saying that your empathy is growing, but like, say it was your mom or your wife, and your wife had uterine cancer, or your dad had lung cancer, or something that wasn't necessarily your specialty or that you knew. Like, in that situation, wouldn't you want, would you start Googling? Would you start calling friends? Or, how would you react if it was something you felt was devastating that you didn't know or understand?
That's a great question. I'm able to, for better or worse, I can call in a lot of favors, which is why I always tell people it's really important to be nice as a physician to other folks that are calling you, whether they're your colleagues in the emergency room, or because kindness, you pay it forward. And if you're if you're a blank, then they're not going to help you out. But I recently had 2 instances where I had to call in, and I thought my wife had appendicitis, and I'm lucky enough where I can call we have a couple of hospitals. I can call the ER physician, and I'm like, listen, I don't really want to wait. What do we got going on here?
Right.
And I get backdoor access and things. And is that fair? No, but it's just the way it is. But to your point, I am able to call on friends that are physicians that can help me navigate. I was able to get somebody a biopsy for something that was benign within like a day or two, where they wanted them to wait 3 weeks, and it was really taxing for this person to wait. And it's the health system. It is what it is. And we can't fix it, but what we can fix as docs is, like you mentioned, me taking the time to call you as a patient, walk you through it, assuage some fears, kind of allow you to just relax a little bit. Because the worst thing, I love the fact that patients have access to their medical charts. I had a patient, actually a family member, who I did a heart catheterization on her husband, and I just met him in the catheterization suite. I'm walking in to see the patient, or walking in to see the wife after the procedure, and she's like, "Oh, I already read the report," and it's not her problem, but she had like a litany of questions for me. She reads, it's like reading, I tell people, getting your car fixed, it's reading what they're doing to your carburetor and your thing. Like, I have no idea what they're doing. I just trust my mechanic. Like, you have to trust me. And we have to explain more now. And it's not something we really like to do, to be honest, because I went to medical school. And I always tell people, Kim's heard me say this, don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree. And we're having to say that more and more. But really it just stems, in my opinion, talking to the patient, saying, hey, let me take care of this. Do you trust me? You trust me? Good. Let's go. I'm going to help you out here. Don't get caught in the weeds. Don't go down a rabbit hole of this, that, and the other. Because it took me a long time to understand this and do what I do. So just let me help you. But I've always said it too. I'm the quarterback, or you're the quarterback. I'm the coach. Let's work together as a team, get some plays, and go from there. I don't know if that answers.
But you know, like Pete said, the one doctor, he just didn't trust.
Yeah.
And so not that would be the case with you, but if you get a doctor, like, how do you know that doctor knows what he's talking about? So the more you can learn, you know, it's probably good. At least the language that surrounds your disease.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, if you look at a consent form, it's written for a fourth grader. My daughter's in sixth grade, and yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about this. So, yet we write consent forms in fourth grade, fifth grade, whatever it is. But then now patients have access to an MRI. That, you know, and you also have to understand too, when a physician reads something and interprets it, they have every detail in there, because it's kind of, you know, you have to cover your butt with this, that, and the other. And now patients are seeing this, and now we have to answer these questions. And again, I think it's good that patients have access to their charts, but it's bad that they're interpreting these things and Googling it and going into rabbit holes. And so again, communication is the key. But then you couple that with the fact that we have to, I mean, unfortunately, and I mentioned this in the other show, business, or, you know, medicine is a business, and it's turning into like these, you know, business transactions. We're starting to call patients customers, which I really can't stand, or clients. And, you know, we have to make the client happy. And you may not like me, and that's fine. You may not like my bedside manner, but if I can save your leg, you're going to like me. And so that's just kind of part of it. And you may not like your surgeon, but if they're a damn good surgeon, he or she, you know, you can trust them, and you can swallow some of that. But now we have to, you know, we want 5-star reviews. I mean, it's just this weird, it's weird now, I'll be honest with you.
But I think that, you know, even if, you know, bedside manner, I mean, all the patients ask is for someone to be kind. And I just think that there are so many things that happen in our healthcare system today where you do really want to trust your doctor. You want to trust the healthcare system. But for example, with my mom, we went through 5 different doctors, including an emergency room doctor, and they kept missing her aneurysm. And I wish I would have gone to Dr. Google. But the doctors kept telling me, no, it can't be anything to do with an aneurysm. It has to be her lower back. It has to be her stenosis. It has to be her disintegrated discs that are causing her problems. And because of the pain of that, that's why her blood pressure is going up. That's why she's having tachycardia. And so they kept making these excuses, saying that there's no symptoms for aneurysm. And what's interesting is I've actually met a few people that have had the same symptoms as my mom, and it turns out the symptoms, just like with PAD, are actually brushed off as something else. And it turns out, from what I've experienced with my mom, is that it's always brushed off as having a back problem. And I think there's not one person out there over 40 that doesn't have a back problem, doesn't have some sort of disintegrated disc or stenosis or something going on that could potentially impact. But, you know, it's really important to have these separate organizations, I think, out there that are not medical organizations, that are based on experience, real patient, as long as it's carefully filtered, you know, such as Rock from the Heart, such as Aortic Hope, that can offer a different perspective, a more, you know, they take the information and they carefully translate it, you know, through the eyes and the mouth of the patient. And I think that it's brilliant. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing a lot. And I think it's necessary.
One thing on that too is that's one thing that we kind of pride ourselves is we do get people that want to read their medical charts and ask about ejection fractions and things like this, and we just tell them, don't worry, you just let your doctor analyze those. records and wait till you talk to them. Don't post your scan before you talk to your doctor. We're not going to give you medical advice, because you just take a deep breath and wait to talk to the professionals.
I just kind of want to tell
Thank you.
something that I know we're not on the air anymore, but something I kind of forgot to say, that
We are still streaming.
Well, my favorite part of our, well, we call it Aortic Ed now, the day before the concert. It's Aortic Ed. We used to call it a symposium, but that sounded a little too sterile, so I changed it. Okay, so Aortic Ed Day. The funnest part about that, I think, is question and answer period. But after we're done for the day, we go from like 1 to 5:30 or 6. We have a little happy hour before dinner, and the doctors and nurses and mental health professionals and professional coaches, who, whatever, they all hang out and have a beer or an apple juice or whatever. And everybody there can go up and ask them questions, and they start getting their answers over a beer with a doctor they don't know. They don't have an investment in each other, and they get all this great information that they wouldn't get at the doctor's office. And that's just the coolest thing to see happen. And people will email us later, wow, happy hour was like the coolest part, for me, because I got to meet blah, blah, and got all my questions answered. It's like, great. That's why we do it. If you walk out a little smarter than you were when you walk in, then we achieved. That's
awesome.
And I think that Dr. John, actually, you got to experience that with our Save My Piggies in-person conference. That was the first one you got to attend in person in Chicago recently. Just from your perspective, from a doctor's perspective, what was that like to mingle with patients in a more casual setting?
Well, I mean, it's nice in the sense that you yourself are a little bit disarmed, and then the patient's disarmed. When you're having a clinic visit with a consult with a patient, you kind of, again, I'm always candid here, so you have to have your game face on, and no matter what's going on in the hospital or what's going on in your personal life, like when you walk in to interact with a patient, you've got to be as professional as you can. You've got to be pretty cheerful if possible, and it's not like being a salesman. I don't want anybody to interpret it that way. But I mean, if I come off grumpy, then that translates into Phillips is grumpy and I don't really like him. And so you kind of you've got to have a little bit of a facade up to some degree. But when you can do something in a disarmed environment where the patients are there, I mean, it kind of reminds me of like seeing my teacher when I was a kid, seeing my teacher in the grocery store, like, oh my, holy cow, these people actually have a life. They do things that we do. I mean, like, I think that's kind of what Pete and Amy, at least I think what Pete was referencing. And so in that situation, it's just much more relaxed and very enjoyable for me. Cause you hear stories too. I mean, people that Save My Piggies, patients were crying and I mean, they're very emotional, and you get emotional too. Cause you realize at the end of the day, and I've said this before, we get into this field because we have compassion for others. You want to help people. We help more people than we hurt, because these diseases, people are sick, and Pete didn't cause his aneurysm. Pete didn't cause his bicuspid valve, but it's there, and there's risk involved in doing that surgery. But he got through it, and he is a light for people that are sometimes in a dark space. And Rock from the Heart is, I mean, that is a very, very powerful kind of tool that they have to help people, because you got to keep making plans, to quote the Ohio Health messaging.
I love that messaging. I think that is just the most important part of healing, is you have to keep making plans. Thank you so much, Pete and Amy Johnson with Rock from the Heart. You can go to their YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Rock from the Heart. Where, again, just so we have it, where can people go to get tickets and find out more?
Well, rockfromtheheart.org. And that has links for our Minneapolis, our concerts in St. Paul this year at the Palace Theater. Fargo is not for sale yet, or on sale yet, but Fargo will be May 2nd. And we can't say who we almost have signed for Fargo, because that would just ruin the surprise. Yeah. So we can't tell.
And the easiest page to get like all the links is on from our homepage. If you go to the event details page, I try to put everything on one spot, whether it's from our partner hotel, the registering for the aortic ed sessions. So everything, so there'd be a link to everything on that. So rockfromtheheart.org/event-details that's the page that you'll hit, or else just hit event details off the main page. So